and welcome back to Career Hacking Village here at DEF CON. It's Kathleen on Twitter, and I'm really excited because I get to have someone from my local community sharing his thoughts on career escalation. So, Andy, tell us a little bit more through your presentation about how people get stuck, how they can move on, and what they really need to look at as far as the pitfalls in their career. So, Andy, take it away.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. So there's lots of great advice out there, and I was thinking through, career hacking. I've done some talks in the past, besides the Diane Initiative, and there's a lot of really good things about networking and resume reviews. There's a lot of good resources, and one of the things that the gaps I found, I think, was how do we level up ourselves, and then how we also level up our teams, and how that's important to track. So that's what I'm going to talk about today: career escalation techniques. Of course, set of slides it wouldn't be PowerPoint without a Who Am I slide. I am the chief evangelist of FIA LLC. We're a Northern Virginia-based company, do mostly government contracting. So if you hear anything that sounds a little weird, just know that that's my bias, right? We tend to hire for government contracts. So yes, I do have a bunch of certs. I don't normally list those; they're not my signature block. But when you're talking about career hacking, I think it's important to talk about what you got, where you came from in your career, and how you got there. So I do list them when I do talk about my career hacking stuff. So otherwise, they're not normally there. I'm a SANS master student. I'm about to finish up a master's program here in the next couple of months. That's been an absolutely amazing program for my career. So if you are considering a master's program already, I would say go look at that one. You get the degree plus all of the technical certs. Plus you get to publish papers, network with SANS instructors and other students. And I don't think there's, other than starting with my company 8.5 years ago, I don't think there's any single thing that's probably helped my career as much as going through that program. At least my technical abilities really ramped up because of that program. So I'm a big supporter, believer in SANS. They got a bunch of free resources, and we'll kind of cover some of those here in a second. But yeah, so mostly what I like to do, like I said, I'm a government contractor. I do threat intelligence normally day in, day out. But I also really focus on building threat intelligence programs. So how do we grow a program? How do we measure them? How do we grow the individuals? And that's just some of the places I've picked up some of the things we're talking about today. I'm a former Army guy as well. Did some time as a combat MP and learned a little bit about leadership. Army likes to beat that into you a little bit. So hopefully some of that will come out. So today is talking about escalating our careers. Really going to focus on escalating like local privileges, right? Working on yourself. How do you get yourself leveled up? How do you get the skills that you need for that next level position, whether they're technical, personable, right? Interpersonal skills, the soft skills, which is some of the hardest ones, right? Everybody hates that term now, soft skills, because those really are the ones that are impossible to teach. Ignore the things falling down behind me. That's life with kids. And then escalating group privileges, really like working with your team and how do you manage your team and measure that management so that you can also get promoted based off of that experience and those skills. Those are really important to me. I actually kind of vision like a MITRE ATT&CK spreadsheet, right? With like initial access, like an interview prep and resume writing. And like, we're going to focus on, privilege escalation here. But one, I think everyone's tired of seeing me talk about Excel anyway, or MITRE ATT&CK or both. So we'll just go with regular agenda bullets, but that's really what it is, right? Working on yourself and working on your team, hopefully working on those at the same time, but then pulling out those details of how you did that and what that success, those successes were, and being able to figure out how to show those either in your resume or to your management so that you can get promoted or get that next opportunity. So first, talking about those, escalating yourself. So you got to know where you want to go. Having a rough plan of the roles and responsibilities and the things that you want to be doing. I really like the Art of Manliness podcast. They've got a lot of great advice out there. The one article, a couple years old now, 7 Habits, begin with the end in mind, right? Having that career map, I think, is really important. Even if you don't end up following it, I always, thought I was going to be an astronaut or a doctor. Okay, I never thought I was going to do any of those. I thought I was going to be doing construction still in California. But having a plan is one thing, right? It gives you some structure. But knowing that there are multiple routes along that plan, you could end up coming into infosec as a SOC analyst and end up really loving malware analysis and becoming a malware person. Or you get really tired of being in the SOC and red team keeps knocking over your door, so you want to go end up being on the red team and completely changing the direction of your career. But either way, I think it's important to map that out and think about what those next roles are, because that helps you figure out what to train next. So have a plan in mind, right, and kind of stick to it as much as you can until that shinier thing takes away your attention. So there are a couple of existing career maps. You've probably seen them around the interwebs. I like this one actually from the MITRE's got the 10 strategies for cybersecurity operations center way down in this great free PDF that's out there on the interwebs. Links available at the bottom, but they have this typical career path through the SOC. Typical is pretty hard to say in infosec because everyone comes in and out at different angles, but this is something that you could expect, different positions you'd see in a SOC. So even if this isn't necessarily a career path you pick, these are some of the things you can start looking at and understanding in those job descriptions. What is that? If I really want to move up from a tier 1 analyst to do pen testing or be into the CTI team, right? Cyber threat intelligence. What are some of those roles and responsibilities and skills? You can start digging into those. If you're getting burnt out, right, in one position, you can start looking up some of those that are around you. Everyone hopefully is familiar with the map of cybersecurity domains. It's a little less of a career map, more of like a domain map of everything that's going on in cybersecurity. One of the things I like about this, and it helps me think about when I'm mentoring somebody or working on my own career, is looking at some of the things that are around their field. So folks that are into incident response and understanding the different teams that they rely on for help. And I can see, from this chart that they have to, they're part of the blue team. They work with investigations. They're part of security operations. Some folks just call their SOC IR analyst. That can get confusing for some folks. You can see that they got to understand detection and breach notifications. And those are things that an individual can look at a career map like this and realize, I need to study up on those. I don't know what that means, right? So this is a good example of using a map to figure out some of the things you should learn. And this beautiful shotgun to the face, I love this thing, the certs map. It is quite overwhelming. You can see there's a bunch of different domains listed out here in the different kind of channels up and down. And then there's some certs that go across. At the very top, I think in theory, those are the big certs, the highest ones. But there's a lot of certifications, and it can be very, very overwhelming. Everyone asks, what cert should I get first as I'm coming in, or I'm mid-level in my career? Having a map and understanding like where they sit is kind of important. We'll notice that CISSP is not at the bottom here. It's not an entry-level cert, no matter what those job positions you see on the internet say. The reality is they do stack, right? And understanding what may be the next cert, or what if you have a couple of certs or you're looking at a different career field, what are some opportunities? You can go pull on those and dig into those, right? There's a lot out there about certifications, not trying to beat these up too much, but obviously I'm a big fan of them. I think in a lot of ways, people ask me, is a certification worth it? Absolutely, at least one. If you don't know, especially in government contracting, you'll see what we call labor categories. They'll have certification requirements. So you can say, oh, certs are dumb. I've been doing this for 20 years. But if you want to get to that next level, you absolutely have to take a cert. And so if a couple $100 or a couple $1,000 is worth, getting that $10,000 raise or whatever that number is for your next level, then I think that investment's worth it. But that's ultimately up to you, right? So a while back, I came up with this method of using the NICE framework, right? If you're familiar with the NIST, they came out with the NICE framework, National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education. It's a really cool list of roles with the knowledge, skills, and abilities, right? The KSAs, I'll say that a lot, knowledge, skills, and abilities listed underneath. The CISA website has a really cool tool. You can look up the different roles and see what those KSAs are, to include some of the tasks that are associated with those. And of course, a bunch of the certification programs have already mapped back to this NICE framework. So if you want to be a SOC analyst, you can go look at the CompTIA's page, or you can go look at many other vendors have put together a similar page as this. And you can kind of understand what those areas are that you need to study. I came up with a self-assessment model on this. I just gave that talk at the Diana Initiative as a pre-talk a couple of weeks ago. It's available on YouTube. And the whole idea is to go through and you do this self-assessment and you rate yourself for each one of these KSAs, right? You can export them out to an Excel sheet that's available online, and you can identify what your low areas are. It's also important to identify your high areas too, right? Not just beat up on yourself, but identifying those low areas and identifying what else you need to level up as an individual to say that you're ready for the next level. I really believe that's an important thing that we constantly have to do is, ask ourselves before I get promoted, what do I need to do next? Um, you can absolutely go work with your leadership and your mentors, ask them, what else you need to do. But part of this is it's your own career. So you need to figure out how to do a self-assessment. I like to model the NICE framework as a self-assessment model. You could just give yourself, a handful of categories based off of, what your role is, what your, resume says, and or what your next job description is, right? If you read a position you want to apply for, give yourself a kind of a 1 through 5 rating. A 1, I don't know this at all. It's a 5, I'm kind of a big deal, right? And I could teach this stuff. You could do that with a job description, right? And kind of give yourself a self-assessment. The big thing is knowing yourself, right? And knowing where you want to go and identifying those gaps and starting to train. And there are a lot of training resources, right? From some of the kind of passive things like listening to podcasts. There's a whole big list of them out there, of course, on awesome podcasts on GitHub. Everyone's got their own mega list I could insert here. I'm a big history nerd, so I will say Dan Cartman's Hardcore History may not be related to InfoSec at all, but it's a really, really cool podcast. Getting into YouTube, right, though, and looking at filling in some of those gaps. You did that self-assessment either from using the NICE framework, as I mentioned, or reading a job description and saying, this is an area that I need to fill in if I want to move into this position. Start looking up those terms, just search them on YouTube. You'll find a bunch of videos. If you're looking for InfoSec related stuff, I guarantee there's probably a B-Sides talk, a SANS talk, or John Breath over at Cyber Insight has a video about it, especially if it's networking related. He's got a lot of stuff. YouTube probably has a video on it. And there's a great way just to get started and familiar with the terms. They'll probably link out to additional resources. Then you can start getting into like the hands-on stuff, right? Plenty of conference CTFs, hack the box, over the wire, under the wire. There's so many cool resources, and it's really easy to get distracted, right? You can go in and start, completely forget your training path if you don't follow and write down what you want to do. You kind of have to stay strict because there is a lot of fun things to do, but you do that self-assessment, say, this is an area I need to know better about, right? I'm on blue team and I want to move into red team. I'm reading this job description and it says that I need to know about, PHP and web attacks. Well, I could probably go find a couple dozen videos on YouTube and a couple of CTFs that would help me learn that kind of stuff, right? So taking that map, right, taking that self-assessment, taking those career maps and putting them together and kind of coming up with a training plan. And the way I attack training is I heard this on a podcast a long time ago. I think it was Chris Sanders' podcast. I don't know for sure. And I really wish I could give the person credit. So anyone on the internet who finds this original person talked about the learn, train, do method. I absolutely love and respect this. So the idea is, you learn something completely new to you, right? If that's, understanding, again, the red team skills, like, web attacks, setting aside time on your calendar every hour, an hour a week or an hour a month, whatever that is, to learn a new skill. To me, it should be something, kind of tangential to your existing skills, but learn something new every week or every month, whatever you can afford. Time wise, and then train something. Training to me is different than learning. Training is something you may already know, and repeating that learning process with something you already know. So going over an existing process. So if I'm a cyber threat intel nerd, right, and I know how to search Splunk or whatever my favorite SIEM is with indicators, maybe I want to go practice through that and see if there's my documentation is up to date, if I'm doing it the right way according to the standard, or if there's a better, faster way to do it, or maybe I can script something, right? But spending that dedicated time training on a skill that I already have helps me, just kind of sharpen my axe and get a little bit faster. The other hour category that I'll put on my calendar, every week or every month as I can afford, and I recommend others do, is this do category. This is doing something you got to do. It's usually something kind of sucks. For managers, this might be reviewing timesheets, right, or employee reviews. But it's doing that thing that other folks rely on. So when I was in a team previously, we did information sharing. So we had to publish products out. My job was the senior reviewer. I had to review everybody else's products, and I really hated that. It involved, commas and periods, and getting in fights over red ink. And so sometimes I could be a bottleneck. It was really easy for me to jump into other projects or go to meetings instead of doing that. But my team needed to do that. My client needed me to do that. So I had to make sure that calendar reflected that time, and I blocked it out to get it done. And I guarantee, from my own experience, and you can see in yours, if you put in time to learn new skills, even if it's just an hour a month, but really it should be, an hour a week, training on existing skills, just spending time to getting better at what you're currently able to do, and setting aside time to do the work and getting work done, folks will notice, right? Your leadership will notice, your teammates will notice, and you will level up your own skill set, and you will be the type of person that people want to work with and people want to promote. So then it comes down, right? You did this big self-assessment, and then it's how do you track this, or how do you get noticed, or how do you get that promotion? There's lots of great advice out there, and going in and telling your boss how much you deserve and all that. I'm not going to touch on that. I have never actually asked for my own raise. I am timid when it comes to that kind of stuff. But I have had plenty of conversations with my management about what I did in the previous review cycle, whether that's 6 months or a year. And from that, you can take some of those experiences that you did from your self study, right? You identified your gaps either using the NICE framework self-assessment, or you did it from looking at that next position that you wanted. You did your self-assessment, you did your self-study, and maybe you identified in your self-assessment, like, I am really good at like networking fundamentals. So you present a talk at a conference, right? That's something that reflects well on your company, reflects well on yourself. It shows that you're kind of at that next level. Not saying everyone needs to give a talk publicly. Maybe it might just be a brown bag with your team, or cross team training within your organization. You just host a conversation to discuss it, right? But these are great resume bullets, or great review bullets when you're sitting down with your management talking about how the last 6 months or year went. And you got to learn to kind of brag about yourself. It can be definitely uncomfortable doing that, but this is how you'll get noticed to either get the next job or get the next promotion. So you can say things like, I hosted a team brown bag to discuss static and dynamic malware analysis. You identified that gap. Maybe you were only on 1 or 2 on that. You didn't really know too much about it. I guarantee if you want to learn something, the best way to do it, everyone says, is teach it. Try to put together some slides or a blog about something, even if you never publish them or show them to anybody. It is a great way to structure your research and structure your learning. Take that, right, and try to do a brown bag, or at least show it to another friend if you're uncomfortable presenting in front of other people. And it's a great way to level up those skills. Try to turn those into KPIs and metrics, right? Every manager needs KPIs and metrics. So, being able to put those into a resume bullet or put them into a review bullet, like, I raised my NICE self-assessment score by 35% over 6 months. Like, that's a huge increase, right? It shows that you're dedicated. I guarantee if you bring that to your manager, like I'm a manager, I do reviews every 6 months with my employees. If someone was like, hey, I did a self-assessment on my own, I identified these areas, and I did self-study, and here's what I did, and I raised my self-assessment score by 35%. It's like, stamp that person's file as promote ahead of peers, like, immediately, right? That is someone who gets it, like, gets that they need to invest in themselves. And that's really awesome. I guaranteed if you can do these kinds of things for yourself, you will get noticed by your management, and you'll get noticed by, on your resume if you're hiring for other positions. So again, with your identifying your local privileges, right? Yourself, getting yourself promoted. Identify where you want to go, who you want to be when you grow up, kind of a thing. Identifying the training that best gets you there, scheduling it out, and sticking to the schedule as much as you can. Obviously, life pops up and gets in your way, but try to focus on training and learning and doing the thing, right? And then tracking your progress, whether that's in your resume or your employer reviews, and or both, right? Being able to track those is also really important. All right, so shifting gears, we leveled up. We're cyber Jedi or infosec superstar, right? No superstars in this field. The other thing I think is missed is working with our own team, right, and escalating our group privileges. We'll talk about. I don't think we do very well in infosec is getting along with our friends now, with our coworkers. We don't get really along well with tracking, the success of our team. Everyone's going to cry about KPIs and metrics. And in my experience, KPIs and metrics have always kind of been something we have to collect for somebody else, and we don't really care about or think about what do we collect for ourselves. And that's what I want to talk about today. Is I think it's important to think about what do we collect at our local level about our team. How do we measure our team? One of the things I learned early in my Army career, when I first became a leader, was that I was actually being measured by the success of my team. I'm kind of a big dude. I'm not very athletic. I can't run to save my life. And I remember one year in my annual review in the Army, I got an excellence for physical fitness. And I went to my supervisor. She'd send it to me, asked me to review it and sign it. We talked about it. And I was like, I can't sign this. You gave me an excellence. There's no way I'm excellence. Like, I passed my PT test and I like fall over and die throwing up. Like, I'm probably not excellence in PT. And she said, one of your soldiers got off profile and raised his score from last year by like 20 points. The other one maxed his PT test for the first time. You're now a leader. You get measured by your team more than you get measured by yourself. And that really like stuck with me. I mean, I was like 22 years old and was like mind blown. But really, that's something I've learned is so true. Like, going on in my career, like, an individual manager or leader isn't worth anything if their team's not doing great things, right? And your team can outshine you and should outshine you every day. And that is awesome. And that's something that should be captured and celebrated, right? That's something that is I think underappreciated, and I want to highlight, right? We should be measuring our team success, right? Collectively, how do we measure that? Make a maturity model around that. We'll get into here in a second how I've used maturity models in the past. Um, but even just if you don't like the maturity model, if you have KPIs and metrics that you have to send up, think about what you care about at your level as a first line supervisor or as a team lead. What should we be tracking successes? I gave an example. We in the middle of COVID, about 7 months into the COVID shutdown, my team was just kind of feeling, we hadn't seen each other other than Zoom for a long time. And a friend of mine was getting ready to leave our team, and she was working on a resume, and she was like, "Hey, what are some of the accomplishments we worked on?" I was like, "Let's take it to the team." And so I had pulled some metrics out of the system we were using to track our stuff, but sent the question into the team chat. I was like, "Hey, what are some of the things we accomplished in the last 6 months?" And in like 10 minutes, we ended up with like a list of accomplishments. And like, you just watch everybody's attitude. Like, we jumped on a Zoom call to talk about it afterwards. Like, everyone just felt better about ourselves. Like, even though we'd been distanced for so long, seeing the amount of stuff that we got done, especially being distant from each other, really raised our spirits. It was really good. It was something we were able to send up to our corporate management and our government client. And it just, obviously it reflected well on her resume. She got a really good job out of it, being able to take some of those bullets. But like, we as a team were able to celebrate it, and it was a really cool feeling. So, especially if you're still fully remote, highly encourage folks to take a look at that, right? Just think about what you accomplished. I don't think we reflect on that enough. Um, One of the big things for me, and you can use this as an individual, but as a leader, I think you should encourage as well, is kind of what the one up, one down, one left, one right methodology of learning the jobs around you. If you're a leader, you should absolutely encourage cross train. When we were in Iraq, I was a driver. I spent a lot of time up in the gun. I spent time in the team lead seat. My team lead moved around positions. It was really important for us, obviously, from a combat perspective, to know the jobs around us. But I think it does really well in business as well. If you're a SOC analyst and you have to escalate something to the malware team, understanding how the malware team needs to get that right. If you are a threat analyst and you want to get information from the SOC, maybe don't complain that the SOC keeps doing this dumb thing or that dumb thing. Go talk to them and figure out how they're doing their job and how do you get the information you need from them. And maybe it's just a small piece of feedback, like, hey, if you could add that as an attachment, to your tickets, that would be awesome. We'd be able to pull it, and here's how it would help us. That may be able to solve the problem, right? But you don't know why they do the things you do until you learn that job as well. It's kind of the walk a mile in their shoes kind of thought, but it'll just make you a way better teammate. You might be able to provide them better assistance, and they'll be able to provide you better assistance. So, learn the jobs around you, especially the whole, hit by the bus theory or single point of failure. If you're a junior and there's a senior analyst, obviously learning from them is important, but also learning from the lead. If you're a lead, learning from your managers, if they got to step out, are you able to fill their shoes in meetings and stuff? What do they do? This is huge for me. Obviously, as a leader, we want to publicly recognize our team's accomplishments. I talked about that, collecting the statistics and what we'd accomplished, celebrating those and being grateful and being sincere with each other. Being like, hey, you completed that project kind of on your own for the team. You made the team really look good. Also sending strategic thank you notes to other teams is really, really important. Thanking another team publicly. I think thank you notes are awesome. I love them when I get them individually, but what I've seen really impressive in my career, if you send someone's manager or their leadership that note, thank you instead, it gets a lot bigger bang for the buck politically inside of an organization, because hopefully that individual finds out later that you thank them as well. Maybe you CC them on the email, maybe you don't. But now the team to team relationship is a lot stronger because that other manager knows that you're the type of leader that's going to recognize, external folks and, give them accomplishments as well and compliments. I think that's really important. And I've seen it really great way to build relationships across teams. Obviously, as a leader, we want to use lots of we and they statements. People notice that, right? Yeah, I already beat this up a little bit, right? Celebrating the team's wins. One thing I just noticed is for my own career that has helped was identifying like when to pull those out. And I'll literally put it as a subject, right? Team win, and then whatever the topic is. I always write these in third person. I share same as a shared location. They're great for annual reviews. They're great for project meetings or program meetings if you have to do those types of things where you do an annual review of the program and say, this is how we did this year. Those little vignettes are awesome. So some of the examples, we did, like I said, I was an information sharing team for a while. We shared out intelligence from the financial industry, and the company from the energy sector came back and said they saw those indicators as well, and provided additional analysis and indicators. We shared it up as another product, right? That's a really cool team win for information sharing teams. And it's something we were able to, send up to leadership, send them both out to those companies that had participated in our sharing program with us. And it was just a really good way to recognize the team's efforts, right? The analysts that wrote the products kind of get a high five and get recognition in there. And overall, it draws attention to the good things that team is doing. When we needed support from other teams or management to get new tools, it was very easy to see like this team is producing, that we were celebrating our wins. They knew that, this is a team, management knew that was a team they wanted to support. Like I said, here's just an example, right? On such and such date, this team notified us, multiple critical vulnerabilities being leveraged in the wild. Security engineering is deploying signatures to detect this activity while desktop management is prioritizing the patch for this week. It's a quick blurb to like send up to your leadership. Again, I'm a threat guy, so I use a threat example. But it shows how this team is working with multiple other teams to secure the environment. And this is something that manager who may not have even cared about the vulnerability, they can forward it up to their management or to another team to thank them for their efforts. Not only are you keeping them informed, but you're kind of celebrating that collaboration. I'm also a big fan of maturity models. We'll take a couple minutes to talk about those. I'm not going to get too far into the details. Well, I might because I'm a nerd like that, but my point isn't to demonstrate these specific maturity models. These are just two examples that I've used in the past, and I'm a big fan of. The most important takeaway I'll say now before I get into them is they are a great, simple way to track the team's progress, but also to plan the team's projects to improve that progress. I'll give some examples here in a second, but I want to point that out before I nerd out too much, right, on maturity models. The point is to be able to actually track and plan, right? You can project your future scores based off the projects you want to do. You start doing these are great, easy KPIs and metrics to be able to track, for quarterlies or annual reports or whatever you have to do for reporting. There are a couple existing models we're going to show here. The Eclectic IQ Threat Intelligence Maturity Model is really awesome. They have a white paper out there on it. You just got to put in your info to be able to download it. Then also the SOC CMM, I'm pretty sure is continuous maturity model. If I'm wrong, somebody correct me. I'll be okay. If you correct me, I'd be happy. But those are the two models I'll cover here. But you can also build your own. The idea with building your own is keep it simple, like 4 or 5 categories of the type of work you do, and then just a 1 to 5 score. I like to keep things simple. Like I said, I was in the Army, so 5 score is good enough for me. So here's an example, right? So you use these kind of as a self-assessment for your team. In previous examples or previous teams I've been on, we used this CTI one from Eclectic IQ. So just send it out to all the analysts, ask the analysts to pick the scores for each of these categories. They sent them back to a single analyst. We averaged up the scores per category, and we map it out on a blue line. Then we sat down as a team, sent the numbers back out. We're talking like 30 minutes of work total, right? It's like 5 minutes to do the self-assessment, a couple of minutes to send the average or calculate the averages, send it back out. And we have a quick like 20 or 30 minute meeting and we say, okay, these are the lowest scores or these are the scores we want to maintain. How do we address these in projects, right? And so we identify a couple of projects that we want to work on in the next 3 to 6 months. And we start putting resources in place to accomplish those projects to bring that score forward. Like I said, these work as great annual KPIs, and they make amazing bullets for your resume, right? You can say, I raised the maturity score by a full point on a 5-point scale. Like that's, what I'm not gonna do the math, 30, 40%, something crazy. I don't know, I can't do math. But so an example, right? You could look at this and say, we did our self-assessment, the team did the self-assessment, the average score for requirements management, we got ourselves was a stage 2 with the risk IQ. That means for stage 2 for requirements management was a general understanding of stakeholder needs through informal, irregular touch points, right? We're very informal in the way we're talking to the other teams to understand what their intelligence requirements are. We do talk to them, but we haven't really formalized it. So maybe we set up a project that says, hey, analyst Snuffy's going to take lead, and they're going to put together some slides to introduce ourselves officially to the team, maybe have a brown bag with these stakeholders, and let's talk about intelligence requirements and how we track those. And we're going to sit down with them every 6 months or every 12 months to talk to this team about the intelligence requirements and how those things are impacting the products we're sending them. Are they getting better, right? And we can have that regular touch point. And so that brings us up to a goal of 3 on this maturity model for regular and established touch points. So literally by scheduling a meeting and having a couple of slides and a couple of discussion points, we can bring ourselves up a full point. It's that simple using a maturity model, I promise. Some areas might be harder, might involve like tool integration, right? For example, here might be a little bit more of a challenge working with different teams to get integrations going. But it's that easy to summarize and identify the projects that help your maturity. When my team was using this before we used it, we were like, we think we should be doing this and we think we should be doing that. And it was very ad hoc in what projects we jumped on to try to mature our team or what we built on. We did this self-assessment. We identified the things that we needed to work on, and it was clearly communicated to our team, clearly communicated to our leadership, and it was something we were able to track. So here's the other one. This is the SOC CMM. It's a lot bigger and scarier. But you can see it's a bunch of different categories because of the SOC. SOC's got a lot more things to track. SOC CMM's got a free spreadsheet here on the download site. You download it, you just go through this tool, and it's the same thing. You just answer some questions, and it pumps out these numbers. Again, I could get into this all day long and nerd out on these maturity models. These are the types of kind of example questions. But just thinking about how you could use those to drive your maturity. So whether you're a SOC analyst or CTI analyst, these are some good examples. But even if you're, another part of infosec, you can kind of roll your own model. Like I said, pick like 5 to 8 categories, keep them simple. We tried to build our own one time in a team, and it got very frustrating. There was some differences in opinion in the scale, right? And well, maybe we should do a 10-point scale instead of a 5-point. Were the types of things that we should track. I will argue and tell everyone, try to keep it simple, and obviously prepare to fight for what you believe in. And then identifying the milestones on a 1 through 5. 1, kind of, we've heard of this thing, and 5, we're really kind of a big deal. 3, I think you should kind of aim for in your life, right, is we're solid here. We can do this thing. No team's ever going to be 5 across the board for any of their identified categories. I don't think that should ever really be the goal. But having, a baseline and saying we should get above or at 3 for all the categories is probably something, you should shoot for. And then again, doing these, routine self-assessments. My team, once we started using the maturity model, we sent them out every 3 months just to back out to our own analysts, and our own analysts did our self-assessments. We sent them in, we averaged up the team score, and we tracked that team score average. We would discuss, if someone said, hey, services, I gave it a 5 and the other analyst gave it a 1, that should probably have a conversation about why there's that disparity. Maybe that person doesn't work enough projects, or maybe that person isn't forward facing and doesn't see all the other things that those services are doing. So there may be a conversation about realigning the team, right, and making sure that folks are all involved in the same amount of work, or get to see what the whole team's doing. But the big thing is, using a maturity model to identify, what you care about, what should your team be doing, how do we measure those things, tracking it regularly. Like I said, probably every 90 days. I wouldn't do less than that. Like every month would probably be insane, or more than that, I should say. Every month would probably be insane, but tracking every 90 days or every 6 months, planning projects to address it, executing the projects, and just keep iterating, right? There's also some qualitative assessments you can do. The Expel.io's got a really cool one. They got a whole blog on how to measure SOC quality. If you're a defender, I recommend checking these out. I think you can use this methodology for probably any type of team. You just have to write your own, but they actually drop out their whole methodology here. What I like about it is that it's a really easy spreadsheet to use or documentation to use to track, the amount of errors your team does. So, like I said, I was doing information sharing. We used to track very similar to this, the number of errors per analyst per product, right? So we could actually say, um, see who had the most errors in their products, how many products per month had to be sent back to that individual author, and maybe that identified, we had to sit down and have some more training sessions with them, or send them to, maybe they need more malware analysis training, right? They are having trouble translating the technical stuff into an information sharing product for intelligence. And so those metrics were able to help us identify where training was needed, where tools were needed. But it was based off of these qualitative assessments of how well we were doing or how well our products were coming out. Like I said, big fan of these. These are all, most importantly, we're talking about today, though, it's just good ways to track the progress and the maturity of our team. And again, just like we did with the resume and review examples, as an individual, as a team, you can get some really good review bullets out of here and really good maturity or resume bullets out of the maturity models, right? Led an intelligence integration project to automate countermeasures, which raised the team's maturity score by 40% in less than 10 months, right? Or reduce the SOX deficiency rate and tickets by 30%, right? That obviously increases your team's efficiencies and stakeholder satisfactions, right? If you're like, when we were information sharing products, we would always get nasty grams if we had spelling errors or had confusing language and how the malware worked. So being able to track that qualitative assessment was really important to us, right? And those are great things when you're doing your review with your management, or if you do project or program reviews. How's the overall health of the program doing, right? You got to go up and brief the CISO. How does the threat team do? You can have these kinds of metrics and vignettes kind of in your back pocket. So, escalating our group privileges, like I said, leaders are measured by the success of our teams, right? We need to learn to identify and escalate our team's wins and celebrate those, especially collaborating with other teams is really important. We need to be able to set our team's objectives and lead our teams in that direction. One of the best ways I have found to do that is using maturity models. They're very simple to understand. They're very simple to communicate up and left and right among our analysts, and they're pretty easy to get some really good metrics or measurements out. If you combine all those, and you're doing your own self-study, and you're improving your own self skills and your team skills, people will notice, and I can almost guarantee, if you're not a jerk in your life, that you will get promoted and you will have a career escalation moment, right? You'll get that next job that you want. That's all I've got. I am Killer Grizz on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Medium. I got my own website, killergrizz.com. More than happy to answer anybody's questions. Reach out to me. And we could talk about my dogs that are barking upstairs. I'm sure everybody heard as well.
It sounded like a little static. It didn't really sound like dogs, but I could tell what it was. Andy, great graphics, great maturity models. Really love that. So everyone just join us in the Discord channel. We'll talk a little bit more, and we can also post pictures of our dogs in there. Let's just share the puppies. So thanks again, Andy. Thanks to everyone for watching all of our videos for Career Hacking Village, and hope you have a great day and make it a very successful career. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you.